What's up, everybody? It's JT Sports Master Guys with another video. This video, I'm here with my Green Bay Packers 2019 training camp preview. Going to be previewing the Green Bay Packers training camp, give you guys some analysis and some players to watch for the Green Bay Packers when they began their training camp in 2019. Before I begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel and help me get to 3,000 subscribers. I'm really close to that milestone. So please help me get to 3,000 subscribers by subscribing to the channel. I upload NFL videos and NFL content. And let's get into it. So the Green Bay Packers, they've been one of the most highly debated teams this off season. A lot of people think they can end up making it to the playoffs. Some people think they'll end up missing the playoffs. Some people think they're overrated. Some people think they're underrated. I think the Green Bay Packers are, in my opinion, a playoff team. I think they should be able to get the 10 wins and make it to the playoffs. And I think their division is pretty much open. I mean, anybody can win the division. You got the Lions. I think they can be competitive. The Bears should be able to be competitive. The Vikings are competitive. They have a lot of talent on that roster, and Green Bay is competitive as well. So you can make a case that all four teams can end up winning that division there. So I think Green Bay, the thing I'm most interested the most about the Green Bay Packers going into 2019 is their defense. And I don't know how often I've been able to say that, but I'm more intrigued with the Green Bay Packers defense than I am the offense. Their defense on paper should be a very good unit. They got Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith in free agency. Also got Adrian Amos there at the safety position. So their defense should be pretty good, especially when it comes to rushing the passer as well. They also have a bunch of talented defensive linemen. And speaking of the defense, while we're on that topic, we're going to get into some of the position battles that they have on the defense side of the ball. A position battle that I'm really interested in seeing is who's going to end up starting that second cornerback position. You have Kevin King versus Joshua Jackson. Now, Kevin King, the big problem with Kevin King is that he's not able to stay healthy. Injuries has been something that he struggled with staying on the field. And then Joshua Jackson. Now, Josh Jackson was drafted in the second round of the previous NFL draft. He was a freak athletic cornerback from Iowa. And a lot of people thought he could end up being one of the best cornerbacks in that class, but he dropped to the second round. And we really saw that last season. The thing that he struggled with at Iowa was his ability to stay consistent. He was really inconsistent, a really streaky player during his time at Iowa. And we saw that last season with the Green Bay Packers. Some weeks he had some good performances. A couple of weeks he didn't really have no good performances. So he's really inconsistent. So that's the thing with Joshua Jackson is his ability to stay consistent. Now it's going to be interesting seeing who ends up starting at that number two cornerback position. I think, in my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin King ends up starting there. But Josh Jackson is a guy who I think is going to be able to take some large leaps forward going into 2019. In his rookie season, I don't think it was bad. I just think if he's able to stay a little bit more consistent, he can end up being a pretty good cornerback in the NFL and for the Green Bay Packers. So next up, we got to talk about the defensive end spots. Now, one of their defensive end spots is pretty interesting there. You got Montravius Adams and Dean Lowry, who they just recently extended a few minutes ago at the time I'm recording this. So Montravius Adams is a guy who's very young, has a lot of upside, a lot of potential, very explosive, had 1 sack and a half last season. Now, Dean Lowry is a guy who's been around the block for a little bit. He's pretty much a veteran, had 3 sacks last season for the Green Bay Packers. So it's going to be interesting seeing if the Green Bay Packers choose to go with youth or choose to go with experience there. But pretty much, I expect both of these guys to end up having significant playing time for the Green Bay Packers in 2018. What the Green Bay Packers are trying to do on the defense side of the ball, from the articles that I read, is that they have a lot of defensive linemen. They want to have new ways of getting everybody involved on the defensive side of the ball on that defensive line. So I expect both of these guys to be able to make an impact this season. Now we gotta talk about the biggest position battle for the Green Bay Packers. It's the wide receiver position. Now we don't really know who's going to be that number 2 or number 3 wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. So going into training camp is going to be really interesting to see who ends up starting at number 2 and number 3 receiver spots. And you have Equanimeous St. Brown. You get Jake Kumaro, who had a very good preseason last year. You got T.O. Redding. You got Geronimo Allison, who I'm really high on. You got Marquez Valdes Scantling. You got Trevor Davis. Just a few names to mention. I really like Equanimous St. Brown. I think he has a lot of potential, a lot of upside. Jacob Murray was a guy who had a very big preseason last year for the Green Bay Packers as well. He appeared in a couple of games as well. Geronimo Allison is a guy who a lot of people are expecting to break out for this Green Bay Packers team. I think he could end up having a big year. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up starting. Marquez Blanche Scantling, he's a guy who has good size. I think he could end up being a very good red zone target for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers when they get into the end zone as well. So they have a very solid group of wide receivers. Going to be interesting to see who are going to be the wide receivers that are going to end up lining up with Davante Adams. Who Davante Adams, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated receivers in all of football. In my opinion, I think he should be in that discussion when we talk about the top 5 wide receivers in the game. Of course, we have Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham, but I think you can legitimately put Davante Adams in that conversation. He's a guy who has been pretty productive for the Green Bay Packers the last few seasons, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does for the Green Bay Packers this year. Aaron Rodgers made a comment about how he wants to get Davante Adams more involved in the offense than what he was last season, and Davante Adams was the guy who got a lot of targets last season. I think he was one of the most targeted wide receivers in the NFL last season. So it's going to be interesting seeing if he does indeed get the ball a lot more than what he did last season. And I think he could be in for a record breaking season if they do intend to get him the ball a lot more. Then we talk about the halfbacks. Now they have a very good group of halfbacks. You got Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Aaron Jones is the guy who had 728 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, averaged 5.5 yards per carry. Jamal Williams is a guy who is also not too shabby as well, at 464 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, averaged 3.8 yards per carry. And both of these guys can do some damage in the passing game as well. So I think they're going to have a pretty good rotation there at that halfback position, which is something that head coach Matt LaFleur is really going to love, since he's a guy who loves to run the ball. That's pretty much what the Green Bay Packers are going to want to do, run the ball a lot. And when you have a very good duo of halfbacks to choose from, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, I think that's going to help this Green Bay Packers offense out a lot. Then at the tight end position, you got Jimmy Graham there, who is pretty much nearing the end of his career, and you got Jay Sternberger, who they drafted in this year's NFL draft in 2019 out of Texas A&M. Former All-American. I thought he was one of the best tight ends in this draft class. The thing that I really like about Jay Sternberger is that with Texas A&M, not only was he able to do damage as a tight end, but they also lined him up as a receiver as well. So it's going to be interesting seeing what they do with Jay Sternberger. I think Jay Sternberger could end up being a very big part of this Green Bay Packers offense later on down the season, just for what he's able to do in the passing game. Very good speed, very good size as well, and he's very shifty in the open field as well. With Texas A&M, some of those games he was able to make some people miss in the open field as well. So he's a little shifty as well. And he's a tight end who can really push the field vertically for the Green Bay Packers as well. So he's also going to be a very solid deep target for Aaron Rodgers to target as well. And you also got Jimmy Graham there. Although Jimmy Graham is regressing, he's still able to contribute down in the red zone as well. His size makes him a threat down there for the Green Bay Packers. So with their tight end position, it's going to be really, really interesting seeing how that goes. And then I want to talk about my players to watch. Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary was the player who was highly debated and had a lot of criticisms about him. A lot of people say that his production wasn't really that good his last year at Michigan, which I have to highly disagree with, because Jadeveon Clowney was a guy who I believe only had like 3.5, 2.5 sacks his final year playing for South Carolina. And Rashawn Gary was a guy for Michigan. He's not a guy whose production doesn't really reflect what he did on the field on the stat sheet. On the stat sheet, it's not going to show how he opened up his other Michigan teammates on the defense side of the ball, helping them get to the quarterback as well. He was also double teamed a lot this season, especially that Ohio State game. He got a lot of attention from Ohio State there. So I think Rashawn Gary is going to be a guy who I'm going to be interested in watching throughout training camp. Seeing the articles that comes out about Rashawn Gary and his progression in this Green Bay Packers defense, I think Rashawn Gary could end up having a very impactful season for the Green Bay Packers. I think he could end up having 4 or 5 sacks for this Green Bay Packers defense, which should be very solid this year. Then you got Jay Sternberger there. Like I talked earlier, it's going to be really interesting seeing how the Green Bay Packers utilize him on the offensive side of the ball. This is a guy who can also line up and play a little bit of receiver as well. So Jay Sternberger is another guy I'm going to be looking forward to watching. another guy who I'm really interested in is Darnell Savage. Now, Darnell Savage was a guy who crept up draft boards nearing like a week near the draft. Had a very good combine, also tested very solid at his pro day as well. Darnell Savage was a guy who I didn't really know that much about until I started seeing his name creep up amongst people's draft boards, and he really rose amongst the NFL draft prospects. When by the time the draft came around, a week before the draft, he was a second round prospect. Before the draft even started, before the combine, a lot of people had him going in the third or fourth round. But then the draft came around, he ended up creeping all the way up to the Green Bay Packers in the draft. So it's going to be really interesting seeing what he does in training camp. I think he's a guy who has a lot of potential as well. And then I want to talk about my guy, Jaire Alexander. Now, other than Denzel Ward, Jaire Alexander was the second best cornerback, rookie cornerback last season. And for the first couple of weeks, up until week 9, him and Denzel Ward were pretty much neck and neck for that title. Who was going to end up being the best cornerback from that draft class last season? But Denzel Ward, second half of the season, ended up running away with it. But Jaire Alexander had some very good performances last year. Against Minnesota, I forgot which Minnesota game it was, but he was absolutely on fire. He's a guy that I'm going to be looking forward to a lot during training camp for the Green Bay Packers. Interested in seeing his development there. And I think overall in 2019, I think he's going to become one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL this season. Then Josh Jackson. Josh Jackson is another cornerback I'm really intrigued in because, like I said, last season he had some good performances, he had some bad performances. So if he's able to stay consistency and improve on being consistent during training camp, then I think he's another guy who could take some big leaps for the Green Bay Packers in 2019. So this is it for my Green Bay Packers 2019 training camp preview. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comment section down below. What are some players and some things that you guys are going to be interested in watching for the Green Bay Packers when they start their training camp in 2019? Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure to check out these other videos as well.